actually be doing some storytelling, and I was trying to think, okay, what stories do I want to tell? And sometimes I tell the same stories because I like them and they're different audiences. And I was thinking, well, maybe I should start with a Jamaican story this time, or a story from the Caribbean. And actually, I haven't told this story in a while. And I just want to tell you a little bit about storytelling. You know, all cultures, storytelling is the first art form. It's the way we teach and instruct and entertain. And I grew up in Jamaica at a time prior to TV. Jamaica got TV in '62, and then they only had one channel, and it was only on for a couple hours a day. And so my grandfather, my maternal grandfather, was a great storyteller, and specifically my maternal great-grandmother. And so my storytelling tradition comes from them telling me stories. And so from a child, I love stories. And then when I went to college, I took a creative dramatics class, and we were telling stories to kids. And I realized that that was something I enjoyed doing, and that it was said I did fairly well. So I want to tell you this story, which is comes from Jamaica, and it's called River Muma. And the river is a very important site in many of the communities, and when there's rain during the rainy season, oftentimes the rain floods. You know, the river rises. In fact, I was just in Brazil, and I went to the Amazon, and it is their winter in the Amazon, and the water was rising, and you know, they showed me the height to which the water will rise, and it was really quite amazing that, you know, it's from there to there. But this story, so River Muma is called River Muma, which is its own mystery, because it's really about two little girls, and it really is about, well, I shouldn't tell you what it's about, huh? Because you're going to figure that out. Then that's giving it away, and why do I want to do that? Storytelling time. You guys like hearing stories? All grown up and sophisticated and in college? I thought that was for kids. No? You guys like to hear stories? You really want to hear a story? Yeah. You do? Okay, then if you want to hear a story, then you have got to awaken the storyteller. Do you know how to do that? No. No? You mean you're in college and you don't know how to awaken the storyteller? Oh, boy, I didn't think I had to teach you that. Okay, now you're going to know. Here is what you do. You put your hands together and you sing along with me. Storytelling time. Storytelling time. I got a story for you. I got a story for you. Storytelling time. You know what, you guys? You're not going to awaken anybody. You might put somebody to death. Oh my God, the storyteller is never going to come alive that way. Can we get a little energy here? 1, 2, 3, and storytelling time. Storytelling time. Oh, let me see if I'm awake. Well, there were these two little girls, and they were pretty good friends, and they were pretty adventurous too, and they liked to go off. Now, they were as different as night is today, or day is tonight, or whatever, but they were very good friends. Well, they went off this time, and it was during the rainy season, you know. Come about September, October, it rains. And sometimes you leave and everything is okay, and you come back and you're wading in water. And they were warned not to go off too far because the clouds were looking a little mysterious. Some grays were coming in, and they were bunching together. But they went off anyway because they heard there was this orange grove, and it had a great deal of oranges, and they were the sweetest everywhere. So they linked arms, and they started out, and they went off. And they ate oranges, and they were satisfied. And then they decided to take some home. So they got some, but before they could pick the oranges, the clouds got dark, thunder erupted in the sky, and it started to rain. And they had to seek shelter for a long time while the rain poured down like someone in the sky was just pouring out buckets of water. They were soaked. But then the rain stopped and the sun kind of peeped out. And they decided it was still time to pick some oranges and take home. So they each got a bag and they picked their oranges and they were heading home. Now what I didn't tell you is that in order to get to the orange grove, they had to cross the river. And when they left this morning, the river was low. In fact, they just jumped over some stones. But now, they couldn't even see those stones. In fact, the very banking on the opposite side where they came from was way deep in water. So they got there and they contemplated how they were going to get across. Now, as I mentioned, they were two friends, and they were like day and night, or night and day, whichever way you want to look at it. And one was very intuitive, and so she knew that if you wanted to get across the river, because they've all been instructed that in order to get across the river, you had to pay homage to River Mama. Now, River Mama was this big woman who was said to be benevolent, but could also said to be a little malicious, if you might, if she didn't get her way. But if she got her way, then you were safe. So the first girl, who was perceptive, got up to the river. Ooh, it was rushing. She wasn't quite sure where to step in, but she said, "River Mama, River Mama." They listened. They didn't hear anything. So she said, "Okay, let me go across first and see if I can find the right path." So she stepped in. As soon as she put in, the water rushed by her. And she sang out, "River Mama, River Mama." And although she didn't see anyone, she heard from way yonder a great voice that said, "Who is calling me?" And she said, "River Mama, it's me." "And who is me?" It's me, Primrose, and I want to get home." "Primrose, you want to get home? What do you have for me?" "I have some oranges, I have some oranges." And so Primrose, being the perceptive one, took out 3 oranges from her bag, and she stepped further in the river, and the water got all calm, and she stepped a little more, and the water started to rumble, and she said, "River Mama, River Mama." Didn't hear anything, and she waited. "River Mama, River Mama." And then she heard the voice again. "What, you again?" "Oh, yes, River Mama, I'm not quite crossed the river yet. Can I please be allowed to go?" And River Mama says, "You know what to do." And so she threw in 3 more of her oranges, and the river got very calm, and she walked across safely. 2 of them. Her other friend was on the other side, and she was, let's say, a little tight. So she put 1 foot in the river, and the water started to surge, and her friend who was on the other side said, "You've got to give River Mama something. You got to give her Mama." And her friend said, "I'm not giving her anything. She didn't help me pick these oranges. I want to take these oranges home." And she put the other foot in, and she's clutching her bag, determined to get to the other side without getting rid of 1 orange. And just when she got in the middle, still holding her bag, the water surged and surged, and she got swept away. And River Mama was in the back chuckling and says, "She who doesn't share anything gets nothing." just because she didn't want to share them. And it was the goodness of her friend, who was perceptive, who threw in some more oranges to River Mama, who allowed her to come out safely. And so, drenched without oranges, she climbed up to the bank. And although they couldn't see River Mama, they heard her. And she cackled. Oh, I guess I'm going to be having some oranges tonight. Now, I want to tell you something about giving and taking. If you don't give, I take. But if you give, you get passage. And that's the end of that. So, the thing is, there is this whole tradition where we feel that we can get something for nothing. And it is the whole notion in the Caribbean that you can't get anything for nothing, that everything you get, you got to pay along the way. So either you pay a little or you pay a lot. Your choice. I want to tell you a story that's from the South, from Florida. Zora Neale Hurston was not only a novelist, she was a trained anthropologist who went to Columbia. And in fact, a lot of her fiction or work was taken from her anthropological studies. And she collected a lot of folklore. And this is one of the stories that she collected that I really like. Excuse me, how many of you believe in good luck? Come on. Now, you all know some of you believe in good luck, so don't pretend like you don't. Just stick up your hands. Okay, thank you very much. If I might ask, what is good luck? Anybody?
It's like good karma.
Good karma. Karma, whoa.
I mean, luck doesn't just happen. You know, what you do comes back in return.
Uh-huh. And how many people believe in bad luck? What's bad luck? What's bad luck?
Pretty much the same thing. It's bad karma.
What's bad karma? Give me an example of a bad karma.
That's a car accident.
Yes, exactly. You know, you're going on your merry way, you got a new car, and bomb. Car accident, car is total. That's a bomb. That's bad luck.
Microphone doesn't work.
Huh?
Microphone doesn't work.
Right. So, actually, I'm mixing up the stories in my head because this is the introduction for another story. So, but obviously, this story that I wasn't going to tell you wants to be told. So I'll tell you this story, not the Zora Neale Hurston story. This is not a Zora Neale Hurston story. This is actually a story from West Africa. So you believe in good luck and you believe in bad luck. Well, this is a story about two people, tired and disgusted. Yeah. Tired and disgusted were married to each other. Figures, right? Yeah. And they had a farm. And no matter how hard they work, no matter how long they work, they just couldn't produce anything. And they've been wanting to have a child, and they were trying really, really hard, but they couldn't get a child. They sat in front of their cottage every day. Bad luck had overtaken them. And so they sat in the evening when the sun was down, eating from their calabash, and all they produced was turnips with salt. Disgusting. Well, one day, as they sat like they often sat, thinking that the world was against them, and everything was against them, and no God or angel or deity or saint was listening to them, tired, who was the wife, said, I am tired. And she flung down her calabash with turnips, and disgusted looked at her like, okay, you're having your little moment there. And she said, I am tired. I am tired of working hard. I am tired of trying to have a kid. I am tired of not having any money. I am tired of being tired. And for some reason, there was such passion and force in what she said that Yemoya, who lived in the ocean and who was the guardian and the mother of the world, heard her. And Yemoya said, yeah, I think I'm going to be kind to these people. I'm going to send them 3 things that they need. But they only can have 1. They can only keep 1. Now, you ever wonder what it is? You get 3 wishes, but you can only keep 1. Why can't you have everything, huh? I mean, I want it all. I want my cake, and I want to be able to eat it. Anyway, tired and disgusted, they didn't know what was happening. So Yemoya sent them money, sent them child, and sent them patience. How you figure that? She figured us what they needed. And she said to them, I'm sending you money, child, and patience, but you can only keep 1. So, Yemoya deposited them, and they walked all the way to the village. And they came to a little river. And Patience was cheerful. She pulled up her pants leg and hopped across. Well, Money and Child were on the other side. Money, you know, was old, been around for ages. So Money was like, oh, Patience, I am too old, I can't cross, you need to come and take me. And Child, oh, I'm too little, I can't cross, you have to come and take me. So Patience, being good-natured, pulled up her pants leg, went back, hoisted Money on her right shoulder, and Child on her left, and crossed the river. And they got to the home of Tired and Disgusted. And they said, Yemoya has sent us, but you can only keep 1. Oh my goodness. Tired and Disgusted was never faced with such a problem before. They got together and they thought, okay, Money and Child and Patience. Now, we don't have any money, we've been wanting a child. We don't have any money, we've been wanting a child. We don't have any money, we've been wanting a child. They couldn't figure it out. So then Patience said to them, well, maybe you should ask somebody. And so they thought, oh, yes! So Disgusted said he would go and ask his brother. His brother, incidentally, was rich, had no children. And Tired said she would ask her sister, who, incidentally, had lots of children and no money. So she went, and Tired says, sister, Yemoya has sent us child, patience, and money. Who should we take? Her sister, beaten down, 8 kids, step stairs, says, don't be stupid. You can have any of my kids. Take the money. You see what the mess these kids are making? Don't even think about it. Take the money. In the meantime, Disgusted went to his brother, had a fine house, had cars, had maids, no kids. He said, man, look at me. I live like a king. But when I die, tomorrow I'll be dead. There'll be no one who will call my name. Children are your immortality. Take the child. Tired and Disgusted came back together. And they said, my sister says we should take the money. Well, my brother says, no, we should take the child. Money, child, money, child. Who do you think they should take? Where did you guys come from? How did you know that? Oh my goodness, they couldn't decide, so they said, well, we haven't considered Patience, so maybe we should take her. And so they said, goodbye, Money. Goodbye, child, said Disgusted, thinking he's going to die with all this money and nobody will chant his name. But they said goodbye. And so Child bundled up her little stuff, and Money bundled up her little stuff, and they left Tired and Disgusted house, and they came to the same river. And Money said to Child, I am the elder, you need to take me across. And Child says, I'm just a little baby, I can't cross, you need to take me across. And they argued back and forth. And Yamaya heard them and she says, "Oh, I'm tired of you two. Stay! Go back!" And so they went back, and tired and disgusted, got to keep child and money and patience. And you know what the moral of that story is? Children are cute, and money is fine, but those who have patience get them both by and by. And that's the end of that. I'm going to tell you the story I was supposed to tell you, but I'm going to cheat right now and do a little excerpt from this book, which is called It Begins with Tears. And I'm going to read a section of a character, if I can find it. Yeah, here it is. This book is set in Jamaica, and it's called It Begins with Tears. And it deals with change and how a community handles change when things happen. And there are many characters in this book. And one of the characters is Godfree, Godfree, and this is a kind of little, his head in his wood, because each of the characters have a natural element that they're associated with. And he's a carpenter and a sculptor, so naturally wood is his element. Godfree is how you mean him can't name so. Who says so? Is who bring him in this world? Is who name him? Me no care what the papers say. Him name is Godfree. Let me spell it for you. Godfree. Godfree. Laughter. Always laughter to dispel the seriousness, to quiet the storm, to cool the ache. He never knew mother or father, killed the former coming into the world, and drove the latter to seek his fortune in a foreign land. He never knew either, so missed neither. Granny was the one he always had, the cantankerous, loudmouth, independent, will not lie down and die, not even for God's satisfaction. Granny. Miss Dahlia, Sister Dahlia, or big-willed woman. Granny. Laughter that masked seriousness. Godfree, boy, where you is, come here. Yes, Granny. Drop your pants. But Granny, boy, I'm still a head taller than you, and there is still strength in my hands. Now drop your pants. Reluctant, but knowing the stubbornness and strength of his grandmother, the boy complied, looking around to make sure his friends weren't in the bushes, watching and laughing at him. Not in the habit of wearing underpants, he stood naked before his grandmother. She stood staring at him, assessing his manhood, then walked over to him. As Granny reached for Godfrey's pride, he pulled back, but her left hand on his shoulder held him firm, and with her right hand she took his rod in her palm. At first she held it like something hot and delicate. Then she began to feel it like one testing the ripeness of a breadfruit. Then her fingers kneaded it as if it was something dead that needed to be given life. Finally, Granny warned him. Miss Velma say you're chasing her girl children in the bushes. Make sure this wood don't cause you no trouble. I don't have any more names in my head. Now pull up your pants and don't shame me. 15 is the age of hormones and manhood and tears too. Godfrey's tears began before he was out of sight of his grandmother, before he could find a private place. But he never shamed her, and she never had to come up with any names, not until he had one ready. Nights, ever since he could remember, he and Granny would sit, especially when the moon was bright and the sky was full of stars, and she would say, "Guess me this riddle, or perhaps not," until the sky was white and sleep was at their fingertips. They told each other stories, and every night, for as long as Godfrey could remember, she would say to him, "Love and shame not the same thing, so if you love me, don't shame me." Many people called him Godfrey, Godfred, but he always insisted it was Godfrey. At school, they said his grandmother was illiterate, so wasn't sure of the spelling or the right pronunciation of his name. But after she went to school and dressed the headmaster down, they registered him as Godfrey. A new teacher might question his name, but soon got it right. The Ministry of Education tried to exert its authority when he passed a scholarship for secondary school by insisting that he spelled his name Godfrey. His grandmother was outraged and put pen to paper. After several letters back and forth, the Minister of Education apologized for the error. Godfrey. The last thing the first thing he remembered tasting was wood, a bitter taste that caused his mouth to water. His granny delivered him at home, and when she did, she knew it was quite likely that her daughter, who had always been delicate and had been sick throughout the pregnancy, would die. The daughter died even before the mother finished pulling out her grandson. Godfrey was born in the longest month of the longest year of his granny's life, November. He couldn't even wait to usher in another year. He came at the end of a year that began with death. The death of Dahlia's husband, her only true love, the man with whom she went to Cuba to pick tobacco, the man for whom she had 8 miscarriages before giving birth to one child. After a long year of illness, after promising to hold on until their first grandchild was born, he died on her birthday, May 23rd, the day before what would have been their 34th anniversary. He died, leaving her to take care of their sick, pregnant daughter, who grieved because the boy she loved was simple in the head, couldn't find work, and somehow believed he could make something of himself at sea, though he was never able to make anything of himself on land. The longest year because in July, less than 2 months after Godfrey's grandfather died, when his granny and his sick pregnant mother were still grieving, they got a telegram from Godfrey's paternal grandmother informing them that his father had fallen overboard and was buried at sea. Buried at sea. There was no place for Godfrey's mother to place a flower or plant a tree, no place she could mark and say, "This is where he lies." The longest year because the hurricane season was dreadful in September, and the wind blew off the roof, and Dahlia's one girl child, sick and frail with grief, pregnant, and the baby father dead, got pneumonia. Dahlia also cut her foot from the zinc that blew down from the roof, and the baby who would be named Godfrey was coming. It wasn't time. He was at least 2 months too early. Dahlia put her hands on her head and bawled. Her husband was dead, and although she didn't feel like being bothered with anything, she couldn't let her daughter have her grandchild with no relative to pat his cheeks, kiss his forehead, lift him into their lap, pull him close, and hug him. Dahlia had to go on living so as to help her grandchild see the way. The longest year and the longest month, November, Dahlia's daughter's birth and death month, her daughter's bringing forth life month. November, no food, not much will, and too many tears. Only love kept Dahlia and Godfrey going. Love that whispered his mother's, her daughter's name. Love that motivated his simple father drowned at sea. Love his strong grandfather, her husband. Love that said Godfrey and his granny and all their people were going to continue. Love. Godfrey arrived, and what was Dahlia to do but start over again? Raise a child again, believe and love again. Love and shame, not the same thing, oh no. Dahlia's suffering had freed her grandson from the tyranny of God. His grandfather was a carpenter, but now as Godfrey approached his 33rd year, he was discovering that he was not only a carpenter, but a sculptor who knew the taste of wood, the wood that was chiseled and saved from his grandfather's and his grandmother's coffins, the wood his grandmother had placed into his 2-day-old mouth to suck upon. God-free wood. So, Godfrey has an interesting life in this novel. He has a privilege, which is a privilege a number of men share, of having 2 women who love him. And in this instance, they are not rivals. It's an interesting little stuff. So anyway, the story I was going to tell you before this other story took over, which is not about good luck or bad luck, but is actually better than that. Some people might say it's either good luck or bad luck. and it's a subject which is still a thorny subject, you know, because even though we have feminism and equality and all of that, there is still the divide between males and females. Wouldn't people agree with that? Yes. Okay. But we know, we, the female species, know that women are smarter than men. Don't we? Of course we do. But do you know why? Anybody? Why are women smarter than men? Anybody wants to wage a guess?
Because when is more designed and this in the modern world than the men.
Okay. Anybody else? Why are women smarter than men? Or surely there is a man out there who objects to that. You know, in the core of his being, is like, I don't necessarily agree, but I don't know if I want to challenge this woman here. She's doing storytelling. It's just a story. Well, I don't know about that. But I am here to tell you why women are smarter than men, and it was ordained that way. Now, if you look at old pictures, you know, if you're into anthropology, you do see that physiologically women and men were the same size way back. And then things got changed. So this story starts way back when women and men were the same. And they worked the same, ate the same, slept, made love, sat down, did everything the same. Now, so this is, you know, your archetypal woman and your archetypal man. They've been living together for hundreds of years, living together harmoniously, working together. Well, one day, the sun obviously touched the man's head. He was out in the sun too long. And so he turned to woman and he says, "Woman, you should fix me some food." Woman looked at him. She says, "Honey, I think you're in the sun too long. We've been out here together. I don't think that's going to work." But man, he was just feeling a little, he says, "I said you should fix me some food." And she says, "I ain't fixing your food." So he collared her and she collared him and they went at it. And they were both bruised. Nobody was stronger. They went back harmoniously. Another day, they went home. Man was feeling tired. His back was hurting. It was sore. They had plowed the field. And he thought, you know, woman could be a little nicer to him. You know? And so he said, "Woman, how about bringing me my shoes?" She says, "You better think again." He grabbed her. They fought. And he said, "You know what? I'm really tired of this." So he got up the next morning real early, and he went down the hill, and he went down, and he climbed up, and he knocked. Do you know who he went to visit? God. Now, God was home alone, because Mrs. God had gone, so God was feeling really good. He was in his easy chair, watching TV, and he heard this knocking early in the morning. Boom, boom, boom. He says, "Who is that?" Man says, "Hey, God, it's man." God says, "Okay, man, come on in. What do you want?" And man says, "You know, God, I just want to have a man-to-man talk with you. Now, me and woman been living for hundreds of years, just like you and Mrs. God, and we've been getting along, but, you know, sometimes I just feel like woman should do some things for me." God says, "I know what you mean, but, you know." So man says, "God, you know, I was thinking that maybe if I was a little stronger than woman, I could get her to mind me." God says, "You think so, huh?" Man says, "Yes." So what do you say, God? Can you give me a little bit more strength? God says, "Okay, man, you got it." So man got more strength. He could feel himself growing as he stepped out of God's house, walked down the track. He was ready to see if this more strength was going to work. He got home. Woman was there, sitting down. He says, "Woman, bring me some water." She figured, it's the same man she been living with 100 years. He might have some mouth, but he ain't got no more strength than she does. Well, she says, "Man, I don't know what gotten into you lately. You better go get yourself some water. Ooh, but man got up and called a woman, and she could feel for the first time that he had more strength. And she tried to push him off, and he held her firmly, and she couldn't free him. Ooh, I tell you, that day something changed in the world. Yes, sir. Woman knew that man had more strength than her, and she wasn't liking it any bit. Now, the thing with a woman is, sometimes we fly off the handle, but more time we will let things simmer. So she was watching man, running it over in her mind, trying to figure out how this change came about. Then she remembered that man got up early and that he went down the road and up the track, and the only person who lived up there is God. Honey, when woman figured that out, you couldn't stop her. She just jumped up and she marched. Boom, boom, boom. Who's that? God is woman. What you want, woman? I don't like how you give man more strength than me. Whoa, God says, calm down. Take it easy. It ain't that serious. Man came. I was sitting down minding my own business. He said he wanted more strength. I gave him to him. Well, woman says, well, you better give me more strength too. God says, woman, I can't do that. Man came and he asked and I gave. I can't take it back, and I can't give you no strength. Ooh, woman didn't want to hear that. She was angry. She stomped on down. She went home. She let that simmer. Fuming. And she got another idea. Well, she took her a nice long bath. Yes, she did. Put on some perfume, combed her hair, put on a dress that complemented her color, oiled her legs and her arms. And this time she didn't stomp on down the hill, down the valley. She walked all slow and leisurely. And when she got to God's house, she didn't bang on the door. She touched it lightly, like a butterfly. God thought, well, did I hear somebody knock? Yeah, it did sound. And God opened the door. Honey, when God opened the door, he beheld a woman's beauty. And woman, oh, honey, dripped from her mouth. She says, God, you are the greatest in the world. When you rise, the sun shines, and when you sleep, the moon comes out. Oh, you flip your wings and birds fly. God says, woman, I know you want something. You don't need to sweet talk me. Woman says, God, I know man came up here and deceived you and asked you for more strength, and you gave it to him. And I know you can't take it back. But you see, now man can control me, and I don't think that's right. Isn't there something you can give me? God looked around. He was trying to think, what could he give woman? But then woman saw these 3 keys, and she says, well, God, what about these 3 keys? Can I have them? God says, yes, but I can't tell you what to do with them. You know, they are Mrs. God's key. Woman says, that's all right. So God gave her the key. She took the keys. She knew where Mrs. God was off in the forest, attending some herbs. She ran down there, and she says, Mrs. God, you see, man got more strength, and now he can manhandle me, and God gave me these keys, but he said he couldn't tell me what to do with them. Mrs. God smiled and says, darling, you needn't seek any further. I will tell you the secrets of these 3 keys. And so she whispered in a woman's ears, this is what you do. Oh, woman went home satisfied. Man went out in the field working, expecting to come home and have his dinner and his beer and his slippers. And he came home, And there was woman, sitting on the patio in her rocking chair, just a rocking, singing a song. Oh, it's a beautiful day and I got my keys. It's a beautiful day and I've got my keys. It's a beautiful day and I got my keys. And ooh, woo, woo, woo. Man says, well, woman, I'm glad to see you're in a good mood. I think I'm going to take a shower before I have me some food. Woman smiled at him. He went to the door. And do you know what? For the first time ever in the history, the door was locked. The door to his house was locked. Wait a minute now. He says, why is this door locked? Woman says, I don't know. Well, you know, brute force always works, so man figured he would push the door down, and he sure tried. But he couldn't. And woman says, darling, I know you have more strength. But I hate to tell you this, I have the key to your home. And if you want to get in, I'll be happy to let you in. But you have to be nice to me. Man tried again to push the door out and he couldn't. And he had to submit to woman if he wanted to get in his own. And she opened the door. Key number 1. Well, he had his shower. He figured he was ready for something to eat. And you know, he didn't like how a woman was being all serene and smiling and singing her song about the keys. He tried to go into the kitchen because you know the way to a man art is true is? The kitchen was locked down. Shut up, boarded and bolted. Man tried all his force. Darling, I can be really, really sweet to you. But you gotta be sweet to me. I'll be love for you to have something to eat. Do you want to rub my feet? I'll open the kitchen for you. Man tried and he couldn't. So he had to submit, and woman opened the door. Now, you know, some men don't mind being locked out. Some men don't mind not having any food. But don't go messing with their bedroom. And the whole notion. So, honey, night came, a man figured this is a strange day. He was going to go to bed. The bedroom door was locked. He tried once, and he knew it didn't make any sense trying anymore because woman what? Woman got the key. Yes, indeed. So, things changed that day. And woman said, it's all right for man to be stronger as long as man understand. If he wants a home, if he wants to eat, if he wants an immortality and progeny, he got to come to me because I got the keys and I got him under lockdown. So sisters, this is your heritage. You see, there's a struggle of one woman using her head while women are smarter than men. So don't worry about these men being strong. Let them be strong all they want. You got the 3 keys. You just know how to use them. And I've told you the secret. Are there any questions? I was just told, okay, so I want to leave the time open for questions or comments for us to talk about the story or whatever else you might want to talk about. Yes?
Very interesting. It's just very interesting the way you make the stories and
stories. Like the first story was a story that was told to me by my grandmother, and I modified, which is what storytellers do. You change it, and every time I tell it a little differently. This last story, Why Women Are Stronger Than Men, in fact, I changed it because I didn't like the element of it, because what it did, it has woman going to God, God giving her the keys. In the original version, Zora Neale Hurston version, and then she goes to the devil, and the devil tells her how to use it. Well, I thought that was against, it didn't seem quite feminist to me, so I like the whole notion of a God and a Mrs. God, and the woman giving her the power, empowering her. So I always do that when I find a story. There are very few stories that I tell straight as I get them. I always modify them.
How do you find your stories?
Flipping through books, you know, all of these stories, some version of these, except for the first one, I found in various books. So I was reading, I think, not Horses Are Men, one of Zora Neale Hurston's work, and I came across the story and I liked it, and I just started to develop it. And the more I tell it, the more I like it, and the more it changes over the years. So it's most of the stories I tell, I get the germ of the story, or the form of the story, the beginning of the story, from a text, and then I modify it depending on, you know, my particular objective.
How long have you been telling stories?
You know, I've been telling stories for quite a while. I really started, I think, in about 1975, which is telling you my age here. When I was in school, you know, when I was in college, we did a creative dramatist class for children, and we had to do a performance for children, and that's really when I realized and I discovered that I could tell stories and I like stories. And I've not always been consistent. So, you know, I did that for a little bit, and then I didn't do it, and in the last 20 years, I've been telling stories in addition to teaching and writing.
Do you have your stories available for the public, like through books or?
No. Like, I have my novel, and I have a poetry collection, and I have short story collections, and I sometimes tell those stories as an oral art form. But I don't have any published stories. I have some children's picture book stories that I've written that I'm waiting to have published. But no, these are not in a form.
Beautiful. Have you ever thought about doing that?
You know, because they're kind of, it would be a retelling, I hadn't thought about doing that. And I must admit that there's a story, another Jamaican story that I actually made up based on a heroine. And once I sat down to tell it, it was so different from the oral telling, you know, it becomes a whole different thing. Yes, yes.
Do you have a favorite story? I'm sure you have so many, it's probably hard to choose one, but what's your favorite story and why?
The story that I love, and primarily because I think my children, all my children love it, and usually both children audience, and sometimes I've told it to adult audience or college audience love it. It's a story from South Africa, and it's in a book, Abiyoyo. And I do my own version of Abiyoyo. And I think I love that story because then I get really dramatic. I fall out on the floor. I get everybody to participate in terms of how I do it. Because, you know, I say, let's pretend we have our little ukulele, and now we're going to sing the song, Abiyoyo. And so the audience has to participate in me telling the story. And so it becomes a more collective experience. And I think that and another story that I, in fact, made a Pretty Pot are my two favorite stories because it involved audience participation.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Were you ever featured like on a children's TV program? Because you sound so good for just being on TV with the children.
You know, when I was in Jamaica, when I finished school in '75, I went back home and I worked as an education officer, and I did storytelling for an education TV program and a radio program there. And I've not done that here, but I've been featured as a storyteller at various places, but not on TV. You have a job for me? Any other questions or comments? Yeah.
What inspired you?
To be a storyteller?
Both storyteller and writer.
Well, I think certainly for storyteller is I remember particularly my great-grand-aunt who died 2 years ago at 102, Aunt Zilla, who was just an incredible storyteller. In Jamaica, we have a genre of stories called duppy stories or ghost stories, which is the most popular form of stories. And she would tell me stories. I would be so petrified I'd not sleep alone. I wouldn't even want to go to the bathroom. I mean, she really made you believe. And I've seen her do that even with adults. And I think she has been my greatest inspiration. In terms of just writing, and my, I think I'm just inspired by anything and everybody. I don't think it's just any one thing that inspires my writing. Just the need to tell the story because I haven't heard it told that way, so yes.
We're surrounded by such a video culture and technological culture, but a lot of us want to tell stories. If we have this inside us and we want to, what do you recommend? Where can we go? How can we relate?
Well, storytelling is now being a revival of storytelling, and there are more storytelling festivals and things happening all over the country and all over the world, and I've participated in some of them. I teach every once in a while or every once a year a storytelling class, and I think a couple colleges are now teaching classes on storytelling, but also just getting together in groups, because you're right, we all have stories that we want to share, that we want to hear, and I think what I find is that those kids who are raised on TV, their imagination is somewhat dulled. Because, when you tell a story, you have to visualize it. You have to have all the setting and the details as opposed to everything being fed to you, which is what TV does. TV is a form of storyteller, but it's a kind of storyteller that doesn't leave anything to the imagination. So for people, I really encourage people, first of all, to just tell the stories and start by telling it around the dinner table. When I do storytelling performance for kids, I say, go home and tell the story to your mommy or your daddy or somebody who wasn't here, and tell your own version. So the first thing is just to do it, and then to just create informal settings. Sunday evening, come to my house. We're going to do a storytelling, session. Just something like that. A lot of libraries are also providing venues for storytelling for kids as well as for adults. So just start a movement.
I'll just say too, since you asked about storytelling, there's a Bay Area Storytelling Festival in May, which is in Orinda, which is just outside Berkeley, with about 10 storytellers that you'd enjoy equally as much as Opal. So you might check into that Bay Area Storytelling Festival.
And it's on the web, and they bring storytellers from all over the world, so they always bring a cultural mix. So that's one of the storytelling festivals that happen. But there are quite a few that that happen in the Bay Area, around the Bay Area.
I think it's StoryNet. I don't know if it's .com or .net, but if you just search Google for StoryNet, that's a website of other storytelling sites, links to other storytelling events and so on.
Right. So I just also want to mention that I did bring a few books, both poetry and the novel I read from. So people feel free to come and look or get one or something like that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.